That's right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How you doing this afternoon? Yes, I am Ann Eller, and my very special guest, just off, I hope a nice little Christmas break, is John McCravy, Representative John McCravy, and we're going to be talking about upcoming session, which starts next Tuesday, and some of the bills that he is particularly interested in, what he thinks the future is this year. Last year was a very, very rough year for the legislature, and I'm going to say it was a tough year for John, but he certainly has come through. And he's with us this afternoon to talk about all the things that have been going on. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ann. How about you?
It's great. It's good to have you here. You know, there's nothing like a little politics to keep everybody juiced up, is there?
Well, that's right. That's right.
So how was your holiday season?
Well, we had a good holiday. We got to see all of our grandchildren and got to have a good time and meet together. I got my mother able to get her out of the nursing home to come and celebrate with us. So we had everybody there, and we were happy about that.
That's great. That's great. And so are you – okay, let me ask the loaded question. Are you excited about next week, John?
I am. I always get excited every time we start a new year because there's so much potential. And so
much potential, yes, okay.
Yes, I'm excited. I think there are a lot of things that we can do to improve life in South Carolina, to improve our daily living, and so I'm excited about a lot of things. Number one on that list, of course, is tax relief. And I'll tell you this, you know, I know that a lot of the leadership in Columbia talks about income tax all the time, and I'm all for that. I'm all for reducing income tax. But I think we need to start concentrating on property tax. You know, we can replace property tax or reduce property tax with say, a sales tax. And like, for instance, to give seniors relief for people over 65 to reduce their property tax on their primary residence.
Well, you do get a homestead extension.
Yeah. So if you increase that to $1 million, what would the offset of that be in a sales tax? It'd be 1/3 of a cent in South Carolina. So we need to give relief, regardless, to our seniors that can't. Many of our seniors have had the issue of being unable to keep their homes when their spouse died, because they couldn't afford to just pay the taxes on the home that they had worked hard for all their life.
And Social Security. It's probably paid for, and they worked for it all their life, and they have to move out and sell it because they can't afford the property tax. That should never happen in our state. It makes me mad every time I think about it. So we've got to pass some relief for our seniors. I've also been proposing a bill for many years. I've got it proposed this year again to eliminate the marriage tax penalty. South Carolina is one of only 15 states left that penalizes you when you get married, and you pay more in taxes as a married couple than you would separate. So we need to do away with that. It's ridiculous. And, you know, every president we ever had said we need to eliminate the federal marriage tax penalty. Well, you know, Trump was the only one that did it. He finally did it in his first term. For the first time, we didn't have a marriage tax penalty, and we don't have that today. But there are still 15 states that do, and South Carolina is one of them. Why? So that's one of my pet peeves. Well, is that
we
one
need
going
to
to
do
be
away
an
with that.
easy? I mean, okay. When you start talking about bills and everything, should that be an easy one? Have you proposed this before? I don't know.
I have proposed it before, and
has it gotten out of committee?
Not yet. But I go to them every year, and I say, why don't y'all get this out? So I think the more we talk about it, the more people understand it, the more they'll get pressure on their legislators to do something about it.
Well, that brings up another question. What is the best way for the public to let our legislators know? Because it seems to a lot of people that legislators go down there and we, the people that voted you in, don't have a voice in how to control what happens.
Yeah, I hope my constituents don't say that. But I understand the frustration, And any of my constituents can call my cell phone. They can come by my office. They can find me, and I'll be glad to help them. And I listen to everything they say. And so, I've heard from my constituents on a lot of issues and tried to help them out, not only with their personal stuff and problems they run into with the government, but also with bills. So I've had some bills in the past, just like our veterans exemption from veterans retirement, and I had a lady come up to me at our Veterans Center that you're very familiar with. I know You're very active for veterans, and she told me, she said, don't leave out the dependents. And I said, well, I hadn't thought about that. So my constituent told me that. So when we got down there to pass the bill, I made sure that got in the bill, and I spoke out in our caucus meeting, and I said, are we exempting dependents? And they said, well, it's not really in the bill. I said, we need to put it in there. And it got put in. But that's because a constituent spoke out and told me about it. So I always encourage that, and that's a good example of constituents making a difference. So if you're my constituent, you just got to contact me. That's all you got to do.
What's your cell phone number, John?
It's 864-396-3110. And I tell you this, Ann, nobody has really abused that. I've had a few people that have availed themselves of that, but by and large, our community is a responsible, good community. And so that's why I give my cell phone out, because I don't believe people have abused that over the years. I get more abuse from these political ads on my cell phone than I do from my constituents. So I think that's part of our service. We need to be available to our constituents.
Well, I think, and not only on a local level, but on a federal level, you should contact your federal representatives.
And I'll tell you this, Sherry Biggs, I contact her a lot, and she's helped a lot of my constituents out when it was a federal matter. She's done a good job of following up with that. So I want to put in a plug for her. She's really impressed me and exceeded my expectations for sure.
Absolutely. So you plan to introduce this marriage tax?
Right. And, there's a lot of other issues we have. One issue that, I'm always for law enforcement, public safety, law and order. And one of these issues we've got is attempted murder. So we've got an attempted murder charge in this state that you have no mandatory minimum. So what does that mean? Well, you could get up to 10 years for attempted murder, but you could get off. You could get 30 days and then be out on the streets. The judge could give you probation or time served, and you're right back out on the streets. And some of these people have taken a dead bum, a machine gun, and shot up, or semi-automatic weapon, shot up somebody's house. But they didn't actually kill anybody, so it's just attempted murder. Well, these are violent criminals.
That sounds, yes.
If you shoot up somebody's house, I don't care if nobody died. You were trying to kill somebody.
Absolutely.
So they ought to get a lot of jail time, and I just think some kind of mandatory minimum on attempted murder needs to be there. Liberals don't like mandatory minimums. I think for some crimes, we got to have them. So I don't think 5 or 10 years is unreasonable for a mandatory minimum on a violent crime that.
What's the mandatory minimum for murder?
Well, there is a mandatory minimum on murder. I think it's 10 years, but I have to go back and look.
Right.
But there is. It's out there, so they can't just let them off for murder.
Right.
But it ought to be that way for attempted murder to me.
Right.
So that's one bill I've put out there this year. I've also put out a bill. We had Tiffany Carroll, the saga of Tiffany Carroll in Greenwood, where she fought back against an abuser that had beat her almost every day. He did die because he was a hemophiliac. But
I didn't know he was a hemophiliac.
Yeah, she cut him and he bled to death. He was a hemophiliac. So what happened? Instead of thanking her for saving her children, who he had threatened to kill, he drug her in by the hair for the umpteenth time.
And her children were right there.
Yeah. So it should have been self-defense. But I think when you've got a battered spouse like that, there ought to be some kind of presumption of self-defense. So I'm raising that, and I know that probably isn't the number one conservative issue, but look, when we've got somebody that's being beaten over and over again, we've got to put a stop to that.
Well,
she was a victim. She was a victim in that case.
Yes, she was. But what happens in other states?
Well, I've looked into that, and there are some that have language about battered women syndrome. I wasn't able to find one I really liked, so I drafted my own. Mm-hmm. But I think mine would be a presumption that would be rebuttable. Obviously, it'd be rebuttable. I mean, if somebody plans on killing somebody, that's a different story. But if they're in the middle of a fight, my goodness.
The fight for your life.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's really what was happening right there.
That's right. I've also co-sponsored a bill for stand your ground protection in churches. I think we need to be able to have the same doctrine that we have in other places in church. So if you got somebody coming in there with a gun, we ought to be able to stand our ground and do what we got to do to take care of it. So I think that ought to be a law. And we've tried to protect our first responders with different bills. One of them would give a little halo area for them. When they're responding to a crime scene, people can't just come busting in with their cell phones right up in their face and hamper them from doing their job. Mm-hmm. I don't mind a cell phone if it's away, but for transparency. But don't interfere with them doing their job. We need a law that does that. So I think that's important. And we've got other issues. And I was looking at our transparency laws, our education. One thing we have, especially in higher education, is we've got this DEI that still permeates South Carolina. We've still got high-paying positions for DEI in our colleges and universities. We've got an unfair system that discriminates, and so I believe we need to do away with that. Well, the Trump administration, the education department, put out a compact. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with this, but they said if you agree with this compact, we will continue federal funding, and that kind of thing. Well, I would like to see our state universities be required to agree with the education department's compact that they have put out. And what it does, what it does is prohibit discrimination like DEI. So it makes it fair for admissions. It makes it fair for a lot of things, and we're not spending a whole bunch of tax money on DEI positions. So
So that's not automatic. I mean, that's not automatic.
No, it's voluntary.
You would have to pass a law.
Yes.
And this would cover all the schools, all the higher education.
All our state schools. And I think they should all comply with that and get rid of the DEI in our state. So I've proposed a bill for state universities to be required to do that. If you let them do it voluntarily on their own, and you think they're going to do it?
Well, I know some of them won't.
Of course not. Of course not. They've been dominated by this DEI narrative for 5 or 10 years now. Mm-hmm. So we've got to stop that. And another thing, in all our other schools, our elementary schools, our public schools, we need more transparency with curriculum. Some of these unions, these teachers' unions who are liberal, have fought us on transparency in schools and curriculum. And all we ask to do, all we're asking to do, is allow parents to see the curriculum a week ahead of time before the kids start school, and let them look at it.
Who is we when you're talking about?
I'm talking about parents.
But I mean, are you talking about the family caucus? Who are the what is there a body of group that are purporting this?
Well, when I say we, I mean our school system needs to put this in effect. The legislature needs to require it, and our school system needs to put this in effect, where they can put the curriculum online that they're going to be using in the class 7 days beforehand, so the parents can scan through it. And here's why. A lot of people say, oh, we don't trust parents. I trust parents. But, we had a situation here in Greenwood last year where we had a book that was glorifying the LGBTQ plus, et cetera, and Greta Thunberg. What's her name?
Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg. But, these are very progressive things that I don't agree with. Most parents in Greenwood probably wouldn't agree with. That they would rather teach their own kids about social issues like that. So when you're encouraging LGBTQ, well, who caught that? Well, the state education department's supposed to catch it and take it out of curriculum. Well, they didn't catch it. The local school district depends on the state to catch stuff, so they don't go through every word in every book, but it was a state-approved book. So who caught it? It wasn't the teacher. The teacher got to it and didn't even realize it was in the book. It was the parent. So the parent found it and told us about it. So that's who catches things that are of concern. They care more. Parents care more than anybody else about their children,
right?
As a general rule. So that's something that we need transparency in our schools. We don't need some of this controversial stuff taught to our kids as facts, So anyway.
Well, what do you think, since we're talking a little bit about education, what do you think about this 18 million that they want for teaching, bringing a program into the schools, teaching children about that they need to get away, have less screen time, that we need to spend $18 million. That's something that the state wants to, that Ellen Weaver's, the state education department wants to introduce and get money for. What do you think?
I get it. I understand why. We've got too many screens. Our kids are looking at too many screens. It's contributing to all kind of problems, mental illness,
but should we spend $18 million, John?
Well, that's the real question. I mean, it sounds excessive to me. I mean, I don't know why it would cost that much to get the word out, to ask your kids to, ask you to watch your kids and not stay on the screens. I mean, but yeah, that does sound excessive to me.
Well, that's one of the things you're going to be asked this year.
Yeah, if it was maybe $50,000, I would understand it. But $18 million, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right at all. So, no, I'm not for that. And the other thing, while we're on education, is student privacy. Why can't we pass the Physical Privacy Act where people can't masquerade as a girl and go into girls' restroom? I mean, we've got to do that. So that's another thing.
We had that from the federal government coming down on that lawsuit, right?
Well, we're hoping, but it hadn't been,
Well, it did come down, and they said that child that was a boy could continue using the girls' restroom, and then he went somewhere else, so it became null and void. But
right. But all I'm saying is that should be a no-brainer. Anybody that argues against that, I mean, I got no words,
Well, speaking of that, what's
and
happening?
frankly, our state school district, our state education department, Ellen Weaver, agrees with that. She's given guidance to the schools that's what we're going to do. Now, the Biden administration has a rule sitting out there that's just the opposite. So we have to go. We have a little conflict there. Maybe Trump has straightened that out now, and I hope he has. But we just need to pass a law to make it clear that that's the case. I mean, I just don't understand anybody that would oppose that law, and why we hadn't gotten out. Somebody needs to go talk with somebody.
Right.
But that's all I got to say about that.
Well, a lot of the issues that you talk about are family caucus issues.
Some are. Some are.
Right.
And
what is the status? Where are you at on the family caucus? I know there were some people that dropped out last year, and there was a little controversy there.
Yeah, well, the controversy stemmed out of the fact that the family caucus members refused to condemn a pro-life group for their tactics. Well, we don't control pro-life groups that are outside the legislature. They do what they want to do, just like we don't control groups that are anti-life. So we can't actually. It's almost it could be a crime to coordinate with a 501c4 like that, which is a PAC. Mm-hmm. So we're not supposed to be coordinating with them. And I refuse to get involved in people wanting me to condemn the tactics of a pro-life group. And I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. And so as punishment for that, the leadership decided that they would try to break up the family caucus. And as a result, some members of the Republican caucus resigned from the family caucus. Other members did not. All of them didn't resign, and we had a lot of people that stayed in. So we still got 24 good legislators, and I tell you this, Ian, those 24 legislators, they really care about the family issues. They really do. They're genuine, and they want to work. And so we've been working. We're going to roll out our agenda pretty soon next week in a press conference. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to work alongside people who really care about the families in our state, our good Christian traditional values that we've had in our state. So that's what's made us a good state to come to. We don't need to change that. I talked with some people moving here from Chicago. They said, whatever you do, don't change your laws. We like them like they are. We like the people down here. We like the morals in South Carolina. We like the fact that
isn't that one of the things that we worry about, John? We got these outsiders coming in, and they might try to change us, what we have down here.
Well, we do. Not so much in Greenwood, though, because the ones that have moved here and retired here, they're voting 80% Republican,
Right.
I mean, I'm amazed. So I no longer criticize Yankees. I like Yankees if they're going to move down here and vote 80% Republican. Come on. But at any rate, though, yeah.
Well, they must be they're moving down to the coast, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, our coast is turning purple more than the upstate is. But nevertheless, I just think that's a good, we had somebody from Wisconsin in our GOP meeting that says, please don't change your laws. Please stay pro-life. Please stay pro-family. So I think we're on the right track here. Economically, I'll mention this. I proposed a bill to make sure our retirement programs this year and our economy and all that we don't invest, no public funds are invested with Chinese companies. We need to stop. We need to cut our ties with China as much as possible.
What about them owning land?
Well, I was getting ready to say I've supported every single bill. We must have a half a dozen bills that are already filed to prevent China from buying up our land in South Carolina. And, I think that it's not as bad as some states here, but I think we've got over 1,000 acres owned by China. Some of it's near military. So we need to stop that, and we need to ban that kind of thing from happening in South Carolina.
You're talking about a lot of bills. What is the possibility of things happening this year? I mean, a lot did not happen last year that should have happened. It got ground down to nothing to a slow pace.
I know. And so, I'll just say this plainly. There are some people who everybody now wants to run as a Republican because they think that's the way to get elected. And maybe it is. And they all claim to be pro-life, but then they don't vote pro-life. They all claim to be against China buying our land, but then they don't vote that way. Then they don't let it get out of the committee. So, we've got, unfortunately, in South Carolina, we've got a lot of prior Democrats that are now Republicans, but they still think like Democrats, or they're progressives that are running as Republicans. So we've got a situation where, unlike a state that's half Democrat and half Republican, we're all Republican. We're supermajority Republican, but some of our Republicans don't think like that. So I think you ought to follow the party platform if you're going to run as a Republican in South Carolina. So I just think, like, for instance, Republicans sponsoring a marijuana bill that's really just part one to having recreational marijuana. That's not a Republican. A Republican sponsoring the casino bill to bring a casino in South Carolina. Well, the Republican platform says we oppose casinos. It specifically says that. So how are these people justifying this? And that's the situation we got. So some of them are heads of committees, some are not. Some are in leadership in one place or another. I'm not accusing everybody in every situation of doing this, but one person behind the scenes can stop some things. So that's what we got going on. So we've got to stand up for what's right down there, Ann.
What do you think about what Trump did on the marijuana? Do you think that will make it easier for medical marijuana to be opened up in South Carolina?
Well, let me say this. True medical marijuana, which is not what the bill says. The bill puts in a great, huge system of of recreational marijuana. But if you're talking about somebody who's dying of cancer and wants to try marijuana or thinks it'll help them, I got no problem with that. 90% of the people out there don't have a problem with that.
Right.
But how do you do that without introducing this gigantic infrastructure coming into your state that's going to convert it into recreational? Well, what Trump did may help that, because instead of doing the opposite, if we're able to use marijuana now for trials, which before we were prohibited because it was Schedule 1, well, now maybe we can use it for the right to try. And so somebody who has a catastrophic illness, they'll be able to try marijuana now, and if they're dying of cancer, they'll be able to use it. So nobody has a problem with that.
Well, where does the marijuana come from that would be used in those things?
Well, that's a good question. I think you can purchase it maybe somewhere. I think the University of South Carolina has a proviso that allows them to purchase it for research.
Right.
So, it would be that kind of thing. But I think in the right to try area, they've already got some things set up, and South Carolina passed that years ago.
Right.
The federal government has it. So I just see it as maybe an opportunity to get the few people that really could. I don't know if they would benefit from it, but they want to try it, and even though all the science is not really encouraging about it,
right.
If they want to try it, I got no problem with it. I don't care if you're dying of cancer, Ann. I mean, I wouldn't prevent you from trying anything.
Absolutely.
To cure what you got or make you feel better. So, we give, for heaven's sakes, morphine's illegal also, but we give it to people who are dying.
Absolutely.
So why not marijuana? I got no problem with that.
Did we have a bill that was introduced for medical marijuana last year or not?
Every year. Every year that I've been there, Senator Davis has introduced his marijuana bill. And so it's been out there every year. He's been trying to get it for 10 or 15 years or more. And so it's a terrible bill. We've picked it apart. It would put in the recreational Part 1. So
it puts the state responsible for monitoring it and everything. Isn't that
it
part
does,
of the
it does.
It puts the infrastructure in. Correct?
Yeah, and his bill right now would cost the state $20 million just to put in all the people we'd need to monitor the systems and all that stuff. And there's no requirement that these people pay for that. So, out of their profits. So it doesn't make any sense in any aspect.
Except when it comes to how much money it generates for a state.
Well,
and then we're looking at cutting income tax. I'm playing devil's advocate here, just for conversation.
Well,
here.
Much like casinos,
right?
They claim increases. If you get right down to it, for instance, the social cost of a casino is 4 times the cost of what you get in revenue. So you can go look at these studies and look at what all they say, but there's a lot of opposition information out there for marijuana and gambling. I mean, when you start up a vice and you encourage a vice in your state, what are you going to get? You're going to get more kids using marijuana. Kids are susceptible to it. They're going to get schizophrenia. A certain percentage of kids will get schizophrenia. How many people do you think in
Greenwood use marijuana?
I have no idea, Ann. I mean, I'm not in those circles, so I couldn't tell you. But if they're kids, let me tell you, if any kids are listening, the young brain is susceptible to getting schizophrenia. I talked to a pastor whose 16-year-old daughter was over dating a guy at his house, and she started smoking a little bit of marijuana. She became a schizophrenic almost instantly. And they had to deal with that for 10 years. So I'm just telling you, be careful. Don't think it's really safe, because it's not.
Well, I understand. I think that there's a lot more people out there using than what you and I probably think.
Well, when you legalize it, you have a lot more than that.
Well,
so,
that's true.
It's just.
What about all these drinks and everything they have out here in the ketamine? What's it called?
Well, that's been a recent issue that came up. They've got kratom, Kratom out there. We're trying to ban that. I signed on to a bill to ban that stuff. It's just as bad as anything.
Right.
They've got drinks full of THC. They've been busted recently by SLED. They were way over any kind of hemp limit. You know, they were just out there to get people high, and a doggone teenager could go in there and buy it. So we're trying to stop that. We passed a law last session. Hopefully we'll get even stricter and just ban that kind of tomfoolery. I mean, we just don't need that. Well, our young people have enough problems dealing with mental illness, outbreak of mental illness since COVID, and all the things, the family, the disintegration of the family, all the things that used to give kids stability, they're leaving us. And all this social media, they're turning to that. So we just got to keep our values the way they need to be.
What do you think about what they did in Australia with banning social media for under 16 or whatever? Do you think that is something?
Well, you know, there's a certain point. I mean, I also believe in freedom, so there's a tension there.
Right.
There's a tension between freedom and regulation. So I think there's a good balance that we need to strike, but I definitely think parents need to be involved. So, you know, we need parental permission, I think, to get on social media sites. I mean, I think parents need to know if their kids are going to get on these sites. And some of them are better than others. Some of them are worse. Some of them are now terrible. I don't even know the names of them all because they're coming out with new ones every day. But I'm just saying we need parental involvement in that too, and we need parental rights there as well. So, you know, we can't regulate everything. You know, but look,
that's
they
what,
took
when you
away.
Look at it when you start talking. It sounds like that is what you want to do. You want to regulate everything.
Well, for minors, I think more regulation. Anybody over 18, I don't know how you really can stop it. But for minors, I'm for some regulation there, and I'm for parental involvement. You know, we got to trust. We got to trust who's raising the kids.
We do, but then there are lots of parents that aren't really parents.
I agree with that, you know, but what can you do? I mean, look, if my son, and I'm not saying he does or doesn't do this, but if my son wanted my grandson to go look at one particular site for one particular thing, you know, I think he ought to be able to allow him to do that. I trust his judgment.
Right.
But willy-nilly allowing a kid to get a hold of somebody's phone and get on there without any supervision, no, I don't think they ought to be able to do that. So it's dangerous. The internet's dangerous.
I need guide rails on me.
Well, that's right. And hopefully you have self-discipline that a child isn't going to have.
That's true. That's true. Well, tell us a little bit. I was just reading insurance-wise. There's a big push. I think Merle Smith has introduced a wide-ranging insurance bill that is supposed to help. Are you familiar with that?
I am somewhat. I think, you know, we've got several insurance bills that are, you know, designed to try to cut down on some of these premiums. You know, the real issue we have is how much are we going to regulate these insurance companies, and there's a tension there also. And you know, I think we do need free enterprise, but at the same time, when you get people gouging you and you get people charging high premiums for nothing, we've got to look at that. So I think some of the blame is on insurance companies. Some of the blame is insurance fraud. I mean, we've got some of that going on. And so I think we've got some insurance companies taking the excuse of COVID, taking the excuse of different things. You know, they're getting to the point where they're going to fly a drone over your house and for your homeowner's insurance, and they're going to inspect everything you've got. You know, to me, that's almost invading your freedom there.
It is.
They're going
to be able to look inside and see what I have in here.
I'm telling you, now they want to know how old your roof is before they'll even give you insurance. I think there's some things we can do, and I know that we've had a good insurance reform bill out there. I want to look at all the details of it, but we've got to get our premiums down. I mean, next to taxes, insurance is the next big thing that's taking all your money.
Well, do you think insurance should be regulated from a state perspective? Because isn't part of the problem from last year? They never produced any records that showed any amount of what they were making or anything else.
And they don't do it.
Payouts.
They don't do it unless they're coming in demanding to be able to raise their rates, just like utility companies. You know, we got to get a handle on this for the consumer out here, because, you know, I mean, we just can't continue to have 100% increases in homeowners insurance, for instance.
Right.
We can't continue to have restaurants and bars get a 100% increase in their insurance. We tried to pass something last session, but you know, it's all, they won't give us the numbers. They won't give us, insurance companies refuse to give us the information we need.
What their payouts are.
That's
Isn't that part of the problem?
They won't even tell us what their premiums are.
Right.
So, you know, we need to do better in that area, I think, on regulation. We've always been a free enterprise state, and I'm glad of that. But there comes a point where you're being taken advantage of, and we got to do something about it. So I'm open to looking at that for sure.
Well,
and
I was reading that House Speaker Merle Smith is introducing, he's one of the co-sponsors of this H4817, that reform package that aims to lower rates on homes, automobiles, health care, and more. That sounds like a huge bill. And if they could get that through, I think that would be huge. And it would be a money saving. And when we talk about the economy and everything.
It would. It sounds like it. And I'm certainly looking at that, and I think I'll be favorable on that for sure.
Well, maybe with this guy who's the head here, maybe something will move, right?
Maybe. If it's not just talk. If it's not just talk. It's easy to talk. Let's get something done.
Well, it is an election year coming up, right, John?
That's right. That's right. And
yeah.
I'm not interested in show and all that kind of thing. I'm interested in results. So I want to see something happen. Mm-hmm. I was trying to see what we missed. We didn't talk about. I know that the Family Caucus. Let me tell you this, Ian. The Family Caucus is the only group of legislators that have voted to oppose the casino bill and some of this other stuff like sports betting and the Davis marijuana bill. You know, these proposals threaten our families. They exploit the weak and the vulnerable people out there, and you know they shift costs to the taxpayers.
Right.
Because eventually we're going to end up paying for it. So for the family to prevent addiction, breakdown, all that kind of thing, the crime that comes along with it, we took a strong stand. And, you know, you would think that was radical. It's not. And in our own South Carolina Republican platform, it opposes casinos. It opposes sports betting. Why is this controversial? You know, so we're the only group, I think, that's actually sticking with our Republican platform.
Now, wait a minute. So, that's only 24 now, John.
Well,
I know. You told me that's 24 members.
And we hope that others will join us in opposing this when it comes down to a vote.
Right.
And, you know, one of the first things we're going to be faced with is a vote on this casino bill right off the bat. This
really,
casino.
When you go back next week?
Yeah. I mean, I was the only legislator. They put it on the calendar real quick at the end of the year, last year. I saw it on the subcommittee in a hearing. I went to it. I was the only legislator that spoke out against the casino bill in that hearing. The only one. And 3 or 4, of course, Democrats mainly, spoke out for it. And so we've got to get active. And so that bill passed Ways and Means. It passed the subcommittee. I know Representative Whitmire did not vote for it. He's from Oconee. He's a good friend of mine. But, you know, the majority did. And then it went on to the full committee, got passed. And so, you know, these casino people, let me tell you what's coming in our state. And a lot of people don't realize this. If you follow me on Facebook, you do. But if you don't, let me tell you, we've got over 60, count them, 60 lobbyists being paid by the casinos right now in South Carolina, 60. And most of them are sitting there in the lobby out there trying to lobby us. You know, they called Daniel Gibson out wanting to get him to vote for casinos at the end of the year last year.
Right.
He said, let me tell you something. I'm never voting for that junk, and neither is John McCravy, so don't even bother to call him out here. But that's what's going on in our state, and it's millions of dollars at stake. It's actually hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. So they've already been forming PACs to go against people like me, people like Daniel Gibson, who are against casinos in South Carolina. And so I know there's one PAC that's been formed. They already came out and said, what's wrong with casinos? This is good for South Carolina. And they've already got a PAC with $2 million in it. And they're gearing up to come against candidates who are against casinos. So that's what's going on in our state. They're trying to buy our state. They're trying to buy us. And I don't care how much money you give people in campaign contributions. I'm not taking any of it. But they're giving out campaign contributions too, Ann. They're giving it out.
How are we going to reduce taxes? Because one of their issues is that casinos, all this gambling and marijuana could increase the taxes. Increase
revenue.
Revenue, yes.
And that's always the argument.
Right.
That's
how do we reduce it?
Well, first of all, we've got to reduce what we spend in South Carolina already. We keep increasing the budget every year by billions of dollars. We don't need to do that. We need to hold back. Now, some of the increase I can understand when we got more infrastructure we've got to do. If it's tied to infrastructure, I got no problem with that. We might need to widen the road. We might need to do things that allow our electric companies our power companies to expand and get more power. But we don't need all that we're getting, that we're spending. But let me tell you this.
Well, we got a huge rainy day fund. You got a huge fund, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me. I'm starting to get fired up, Ann, because you've
Okay,
asked me
I'm
a
glad.
good question.
Okay.
We have over an $11 billion surplus in this state. And I'm not even talking about the rainy day fund. I'm talking about extra surplus that comes into our state, extra money from taxes, and that we don't really need. And so we're taking that surplus and we're trying to spend it all every year. Well, why are we doing that? Just because you get money, does that mean you need to spend it, Ann?
That's the American way, isn't it, John? We got to spend it, right? And that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a real problem.
Yeah,
it's a mindset that we need to get away from down there in that Ways and Means Committee and down there in the Finance Committee. We got to get away from that way of thinking. I'm not in that committee, but if I was, buddy, I would be saying this. We've got to stop it.
They probably wouldn't let you on that committee, John.
That's probably why I'm not on it. That's a good point, Ann. That's probably why I'm not on that committee. But my point is, we've got to get away from the old way of thinking. Just because you raise revenue, you've got to spend it. So
then why can't we go ahead and reduce the taxes?
Let me tell you this: we got a lot of waste going on, and how do you stop that waste? You've got to have a SC Doge. So I'm signed up with the SC Doge. I want an independent person to come in here, not state people who are getting paid by the state. I want an independent audit of our state because I think it's so important. We saw what was happening in the federal government.
Sure.
When they looked into one agency and they found millions of dollars worth. We've got the same problem here in South Carolina.
They decided to stop it because I think they found so much, John. That's why I think it kind of went under the waves, didn't it?
I will guarantee you that we have the same problems here in South Carolina. Ron Reddy, who is behind the SC Doge effort. Right. He ran a program, for instance, and he said how many regulations that we have of the, hundreds of thousands of regulations actually violate the laws that we have. Well, he found that 41% of our regulations are violating the current law that we don't need. We should get rid of 41% of our regulations right off the bat. And then we've probably got waste in a lot of programs, so it's a combination.
And fraud, I'm sure.
It's a combination. We don't need casino revenue. We don't even come close. It wouldn't be enough money to even put a dent in our budget. Neither would marijuana. So it wouldn't even put a dent in what we're raising, what's coming in, the billions and billions of dollars we're getting in this state. So what we need to do is look at what we got, and not only not allow all these bad industries to come in South Carolina. Let's preserve South Carolina the way it is with good values. But not only do that, we can reduce taxes. We're reducing taxes. We are reducing some taxes.
But just a little bit.
It's incremental. I wish we'd do it a lot quicker. And I wish we'd put into place the South Carolina Doge and Ron Reddy's plan. I'd love to see him come in here and put his expertise at no cost to the state at seeing what we need to eliminate. So I'm all in favor of that. I mean, I know that makes long-time bureaucrats in Columbia who've been sitting there drawing a fat paycheck for a long time for doing nothing, some of them. I know that makes them nervous, and I know the deep state is not going to like that.
Right.
And so, but I think for the taxpayer, we've got to do what's right. So I think we need to look to the future. I think we need to get our house in order first. Then we need to quit raising the budget every year. And I think we need to give the money back to the people and prevent people, little old ladies who can't afford to live in their house anymore, from having to be kicked out. We got to do it.
Well, I think a good example of that, John, was when they got together to do the conference on the bill, and they came in, there was an extra $1 billion in the budget, and so they decided to up their pay. And of course that got kicked out. But it was interesting that the announcement and then the let's increase our pay. Yeah.
And for the first time in several years, I didn't vote for the budget this year because of that. They sent us, this the conference committee, right, which is controlled by leadership. When you don't agree on the budget, it goes to the conference committee, the House and the Senate, and that's every year. That's common. That never happens. Right. They never agree on it. So it goes to the conference committee, and then it comes back to you to vote for it. It comes back to the House, either vote for it or not, or against it.
Right.
Well, if you vote against it, technically they could go back to the conference committee and say, change the bill again and bring it back out.
Sure.
And that's what I voted for. I did not really vote against the budget. I voted against the conference committee's version of the budget that they could easily change. So that's the trick they do. And then they want to say, oh, he voted against the budget. He voted against everything we do in the budget. Well, that's not true. It's not true. There was some things I could not stomach in that budget. We don't need to be giving public money to drag shows. That was in the budget. We don't need to be funded.
Wait a minute. Are you sure that was in the South Carolina budget, John?
I'm sorry, but down there in Charleston, they take state money and they have drag shows that get funded for that. So, it's not happening right here in Greenwood, thank goodness, but, it is happening. So, I mean, these might be a few isolated incidents, but we don't need that. So, but that wasn't the real reason I voted against the budget. I didn't want to raise my own pay. I think there's just something wrong with that. So I voted against that. I just can't stomach that. I mean, and it turned out to be unconstitutional anyway to raise your own pay in your session. Now, if you raise it for somebody else's session, I think that's different. But what we need is an independent commission. We need an independent body that looks at pay of all officials and decides what's fair.
Right.
I'm not trying to say that a legislator ought to have to work for free completely, but we are part-time supposedly. But nevertheless, we work a lot. I mean, we work. I've spent weeks that I did nothing but legislative stuff, and that's common. And I don't think, if you're spending money and expenses and things you've got in your own district, I don't think, there's anything wrong with getting reimbursed for some of that. Mileage, I don't have a problem with that. A little per diem, okay. But let's make it fair. Let's have an independent body do that. I don't want to give myself a raise. That's just weird, because it's taxpayer money. We shouldn't be raising our own pay. That's not what we went down there for. We went down there to help our constituents.
And when you went in for the job, you knew how much it paid.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I would do it even if it was for free. But that's just me. There's some people that can't afford it. That have to get reimbursed for some of their expenses. But
Well, and the other thing is, don't you think you should have to turn in an expense report or something? Wouldn't that make it much better anyways, instead of this murky thing that we have here?
Yeah, now you're getting to a sensitive issue.
I
know. A very sensitive issue down there in Columbia. So I keep track of my what I spend on in-district expenses because I believe you should.
Right.
I can tell you that 99% of them down there don't. So I know Billy Garrett does, but I spend the money I get from in-district expenses, which was zero this year,
right,
because of this crazy thing they were trying to do in the budget.
Because they were trying to pull it over our heads.
But I keep track of mine, and I spend it locally on things that are legit. So, yes, I mean, it does look bad. People, ought to be able to account for what they spend their money for.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things you wanted to talk about, we're almost out of time, was the closing the party primaries.
Man, and that is a pet peeve of mine, and I know our local GOP people demand this of me to make sure I support it, and I do. We've got Democrats deciding that they're going to vote in a Republican primary because there's a liberal Republican vote running against a conservative Republican. Mm-hmm. So they go in there and they skew the results. I've seen anywhere from 10 to 15%, and that can make a big difference in a primary. 10 to 15% of the voters are Democrats in some of these primaries. We've got to stop that. If you're going to vote, if Republicans should be electing Republicans to be the nominee, not right. Democrats. And vice versa. I would have a problem with it if Republicans were going in Democrat primaries. So we need to. It's just not right. It's a bad influence. We end up with some candidates who are really Democrats because.
Well, how does that have to happen? How does that happen?
All we got to do is pass a simple bill that's been in the House of Representatives.
Wait a minute. A simple bill?
It's been sitting in the House of Representatives for years and years, and every year. You can give credit where credit's due. Every year our state party, Drew McKissick, has been out there saying, why don't you pass this bill? And he has praised the one that have signed on to the bill like me. And he said, call your legislator and make sure they sign on to this bill. And a lot still do not. So it's up to the leadership to get that out. It's up to the committee chair to get that out. And it's up to the people of South Carolina to make them get it out. And I'm doing all I can. Billy Garrett's doing all he can. Dan Gibson is doing all he can. Unfortunately, we've got some purple areas that are scared if the Democrats don't help them, they can't get elected. So that's the issue going on. And it's just a no-brainer. And, we've been fighting for that for years.
Well, and we've got a couple. Okay, so that's something that just needs to get out of. I guess it's sitting in a committee. Is that right?
That's correct. It's sitting in a committee. It'll be in judiciary.
Judiciary.
Where a lot of good bills are sitting.
You're on that committee, John.
I still am on it. I have not been. My request to move has not been granted.
You've been denied.
Most people want to get on the Judiciary Committee because they have so many bills come through there, but I've seen what's been going on, and I asked to get off. So I think I can be a better influence somewhere else.
But they didn't see it that way.
They didn't see it that way, and so far I haven't been moved. But nevertheless, I go in there and give them a hard time, man, and that's what I've been elected to do, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, John, what would you like to say? We've got a couple of minutes here. What would you like to say in closing? I think this has been a terrific conversation we've been having here this afternoon. We've gotten down to some real issues and talked about some of the problems, some of the good things, but some of the problems and what you're going to be looking at this year.
There's one other subject that is always important to me, and that's life. And so I think we need to continue to stand up for the dignity of life in South Carolina, especially the unborn and the most vulnerable. So as you know, we've passed the bill that I have introduced again, the Human Life Protection Act. We passed it in the House before twice. And so the Senate wouldn't take it up. Now our House Republican caucus has refused to take it up. It's a big disappointment to me. But this bill is not the radical bill that the press wants to talk about. We've already, they want to talk about is abortion, is health care, which is not. This will kill women, which it doesn't.
I think you and I spent a whole show talking about this, and it really opened my eyes to what you were talking about versus the other bills that were out there.
That's
in fact, that one that was in the Senate was a...
Well, it would punish women. This bill does not do that. This bill is on the side of mercy rather than judgment. Mm-hmm. So, but what it does do is protect unborn children and it protects all unborn children, not just children that are more than 6 weeks old. So we've got, this bill is not radical. It preserves all the medical exceptions, which we've got the best medical exceptions right now in the heartbeat bill in the nation, as far as I'm concerned. There's anything that even remotely threatens the life of the mother is taken care of in this bill. No doctor has to worry about that.
Well, actually,
IVF,
didn't you go to the doctors and
we
say,
did.
give me every...
We did. The doctors helped us write this bill. So we also preserve IVF, ethical IVF. There's some IVF that's not ethical. But birth control is preserved, and women are not prosecuted if they commit abortion. Now, anybody else that helps them is.
Right.
The doctor would be. The doctor would be prosecuted. These people who are sending these pills in our state without a prescription or an illegal prescription from California, right now, they need to be prosecuted. They're violating several laws by doing that. Why we're not prosecuting them, I don't know. We need to go ask our Attorney General why that's not being prosecuted in our state.
Because wouldn't you be able to stop, we had a discussion with Billy yesterday, wouldn't you be able to stop a lot of stuff if you could have drug dogs or whatever in the post office or FedEx or some of these offices?
I don't know about that, but I do know that all we would have to do is prosecute one doctor from California who has practiced law without a license in South Carolina, who has given a prescription for an abortion pill without giving the woman an ultrasound like she's supposed to get, without complying with the heartbeat law. One doctor prosecuted and charged with a crime in South Carolina for doing that. I think it would make a huge difference. I think other doctors would be intimidated by that, and I think that's what we need to do. So we need to stop this illegal stuff going on, and we've got, there's a bill right now to stop this stuff from being sent into our state. We've already got laws in place, but this would make it even tougher, and I'm supporting that bill as well. But I'm also supporting the safe haven protections. We've got 8 babies in South Carolina were brought to either hospitals or an appropriate place, right, that the mother just couldn't deal with them.
Isn't that Daniel's? Is that Daniel's law? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a safe haven law. Yeah, it may be called Daniel.
Yeah.
But our safe haven law doesn't go far enough. It's only for a couple of months. We need to extend that to a year. I mean, if a woman feels like she can't keep her child alive, why not save that child?
I agree with you there.
So I think there should be some protection for women who just can't do what they need to do for whatever reason. They ought to be immune from that, so they don't worry about being prosecuted if a child needs to go somewhere else. So I think we need to expand that. I think we could save lives doing that.
What about expanding quicker adoptions and this type of thing?
We've
judges and this.
We've taken some stabs at that. I know Billy Garrett has sponsored bills for that. I know one of them I think passed, and we need to continue to work to streamline adoptions and make them less costly. I've done 1 or 2 for free myself as an attorney, and I think attorneys should step up and do it. But even if they can't, I think we need to make it cheaper, make it less costly, and make it more efficient in our courts. So that's an area we need to continue to work on. I know we've streamlined some of those wait times, but we need to continue to work on that. Billy Garrett, he's got the greatest ideas on that. He's done he can tell you more about that than I can, and I'm proud of him for doing that.
Well, how's Tiffany Carroll doing?
Tiffany Carroll is doing great. Every time I've seen her, she's been smiling. She's had a child with her, one of her children. They're smiling, and the community is helping her in every way you can think of. And I actually will tell you that we have a house she's going to be living in that's rent-free for a while, and I'm proud to say I'm helping with that. So, I think the community is stepping up, and things are looking up for her. She's got a job, and I think that's going to continue, and I think she can improve herself. I know she wants to go get some more education, but she's a sweet woman. I'm telling you, she is sweet as she can be. And every time I see her, I'm glad that we worked hard to get her out. And so I commend everybody who was a part of that in Greenwood. There were a lot of people that were trying to help her.
There were.
And outside of Greenwood, we had Representative Travis Moore in Spartanburg that stepped up to help her for free too. So we're really glad of that. I know I still have people telling me they're so thankful that she got out.
Right.
I see them on the street. I see them at the doctor's office. I see nurses that say, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you, we're so glad you got her out."
That's a good feeling, isn't it?
So it is.
It is a good feeling. Well, John, I know that the excitement, and we'll look forward to you keeping us informed during the session about what's going on, and I appreciate you sitting down and spending the time here today.
Well, we plan to do that, Ann, and of course, anybody that wants to help can go to McCravy for House. Our election time is coming up. So far, I don't have an announced candidate against me, but I do expect that the casinos are recruiting somebody out there. So we'll take it as it comes.
The casinos are recruiting.
Oh yeah.
Well, that sounds interesting. Well, it'll be an exciting time. John McCravy, Representative John McCravy, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Ann, and I hope I told it like it was.
You did tell it like it was today. This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. That's going to do it for us. Bye-bye, everybody. Show end and cue the music. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I'll be back in the morning. Don't forget to tune in right here on WCRS.